And here to help us understand the impact of the attacks in Jerusalem and Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit is our foreign affairs editor, Kethevane Gorjestani. Thanks for being with us. Now, this is Blinken's third visit to the Middle East since the war between Israel and Hamas began. Today, he's in Israel and the West Bank. What is the U.S.'s messaging right now around the war and the truce?
Well, there are two main messages that Tony Blinken is bringing to the Middle East, especially to Israel. One is trying to get Israel to continue that truce. As you mentioned, a truce, an extension of the truce means possibly more hostages out and more humanitarian aid in, and that is something that the Americans have been pushing hard for, especially if you think about the hostages, because there are still several American citizens that are being held by Hamas. So the Americans have an extended vested interest in continuing that truce and having more hostages come out. The other message, which is a little bit more of the diplomatic and probably less publicly but more privately, the message that at some point this truce is going to end. The U.S. knows this, and they want to make very clear what their position is to the Israelis when they pick up the offensive. And the messaging is a warning by the Americans to Israel. You cannot proceed in the south of Gaza the way you have proceeded in the north for two reasons. One, they're saying you have to pay attention to the civilians. Two, you have just asked more than 1.5 million people to move to the south, telling them that they would be safe in the south. And now you are planning possibly to start airstrikes on the south, and there is no other place to send those people. So the messaging from the State Department in a readout of his meeting with Netanyahu was that the secretary stressed the imperative of accounting for humanitarian and civilian protection needs in southern Gaza before any military operations there. So the Americans very clear about what they don't want to see happen once the fighting resumes.
Now, I want to ask you about this attack at the bus stop in Jerusalem as well. Israel says that the two brothers, the shooters, have been jailed by Israel in the past, with Israel releasing prisoners, Palestinian prisoners, as part of this overall hostage deal. Could the shooting affect the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel?
Well, there is a worry that it could. It's not clear whether it will or not, but some people, especially in the far right of the Israeli government, are jumping on the opportunity to use this. I'm talking, for example, about Itamar Ben-Gvir. He's the national security minister, and right after the attack, he said, "This event proves again that we must not show weakness, that we must speak to Hamas only through war." He and other ministers from his party had voted against this initial deal between Israel and Hamas for the release of hostages and of prisoners. This party is completely against releasing any prisoners, and so they're using this attack to say, look, this is not how we should do things. We should go and keep attacking Hamas, keep bombarding Gaza, and not release any prisoner. The other side is that Benjamin Netanyahu is sort of stuck between two things. One is the far right of his coalition. He has a very small majority, and so he needs these people to help him stay in power. The other side of this is the overwhelming support in the Israeli population to try to do whatever it takes to get those hostages out. What happens after the hostages out is a different story. But right now, people are focused on getting those Israelis home. And so he has to balance those two things out. A final thing to say on the prisoners that are being released and what the far right is trying to play here is that those two brothers clearly were affiliated with Hamas. What we've seen so far, the overwhelming majority of the prisoners who have been released from Israeli jails, first of all, they're women, they're usually minors, and minors, young men arrested for throwing rocks, for making comments against Israel, but they're not big figures of Hamas or big figures of Palestinian terrorism.
Some haven't even been tried.
Some haven't even been tried. And so Israel is really releasing lower level people rather than very hardened criminals from Hamas.
All right. Kethevane Gorjestani, our foreign affairs editor, thank you for breaking that down for us.